Okay. This is the August 31st meeting of the Fire Station Building Committee. We're here in Meeting Room 124, 1 Liberty Lane. This meeting is also available via Zoom. We do have one member who is remote, so I'll take a roll call attendance. Aaron Hunt.
Here.
Aaron Kinney.
Present.
Justin Yanosik.
Here.
Chris Baker. Here. Kevin Champagne here, and I've been told Todd Whitmark is on his way, but he's not present at the moment. So first agenda item is public comment. We have some members of the public on the call, on the Zoom call, so raise their hand if they want to talk. No hands, we'll move into the discussion items. So I did, if I can just jump ahead real quick, I know we've got 2 action items on here. I think the first action item we're probably not going to take action on tonight. The informational boards, just to kind of update everybody. I've been in touch with town council. There's, stands for, but they oversee public funding or public spending for town projects, and they're mostly interested in making sure that anything that we do put up, isn't swaying someone one way or the other in a vote. So town council forwarded the 2 potential boards to them, which they're reviewing, and they're going to get feedback on, and then at that point I think we can vote on them once we kind of know if they need to be stripped back, if there's some limitation on where we can put them. So I think we should punt that to the next meeting, or maybe we can vote by email or something to set them up. So, all right, we'll go back to discussion items then, Ron. Unless you want to do these in a particular order, I'll just go in the order they're on here. And it says, please, building design related topics, MAAB variance.
Right, so what I'm going to do is send you a draft letter. So the process is that we can ask them for a advisory opinion.
And this is related to the ADA.
Yeah, this is related. So we believe that everything in the station complies with ADA. It's the MAAB, the Massachusetts Architectural Aspects Board, that's a little bit more stringent than the American Disability Act, which is a federal regulation. But and the reason we say we comply is I think the federal regulation basically says we understand, vocational use, we understand staff-only use, whereas the MAAB, it's a little bit more complicated. So what we're going to do is submit, and there is a list of items that'll be on that draft that we're going to produce and send to you. And essentially what that says is, number 1, there are appliances that aren't made, right, that comply with MAAB regulation. There are spaces within the building that the public should not be going into, period, and we're going to get an advisory opinion. Now, the 3 tracks we talked about last time, which the town attorney can review, is number 1, just basically saying that those spaces within the building are not open to the public, right? Some of those pieces of equipment are not allowed to be accessed by the public, just like you're not going to let them drive away with a fire truck. They're not going to mess with your gear extractor. They're not going to mess with your gear lockers, and maybe they won't touch your wall ovens. We don't know. But, all of the things that just aren't made to comply. If they come back and give us their advisory opinion and pretty much say, yeah, we agree with you, we then formally have to get a variance for this specific project. The other way to do this, and the other track, if you will, is to basically go to them with a letter that the town signs. Committee or spaces are not accessible. We will not allow the public in there, and we're telling you that we're not going to allow them to, touch these pieces of equipment that aren't handicap accessible. It's basically staff only. And then that goes into them, and it's a formal document. It talks about the fact that you got to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And so basically what they're saying is, if Norfolk takes that position, that they expect you to honor it, that's all. And so with that, we'll send that letter off to Kevin. It'll basically explain exactly the wording that we're recommending go to the MAAB. The town attorney can take a look at it. And the town attorney could decide, we don't want an advisory opinion. We want to simply say that these spaces are not accessible. Let me give you an example. The town of Walpole, they basically said the second floor of our station is inaccessible. There may be other spaces that they designated, but we know from our visit that the second floor is not accessible to the public, period. It's staff only. I think, Steve, you had a project as well?
Yeah, we had a project that it was a quarters and so forth on the second floor. City just decided to make the entire building not open to the public because they just did not have the room to install an elevator and create that accessibility to the second floor. All public work was, public interaction was moved to City Hall.
So,
Sorry, that was me. I just got on so I can share my screen. Sorry.
so,
You want it displayed up there?
I don't know what Ron was gonna display.
No, I know there are more things coming down the
Yeah.
line for me to display. I've been talking and trying to get on the
That's
video.
not on.
Oh, okay.
It was.
Okay.
But it'll, yeah, okay.
Should.
All right.
So Ron is gonna send me this letter. I'm gonna forward it to town councilor. Assuming I can, and I don't need to send it through you, Amanda, but I'll send it to town council to get their opinion on what approach we should take. So,
Okay.
next item is parking count. I know that's kind of tied to the planning board meeting status as well.
Yeah, so the planning board meeting last night, it was decided that the chief needs to get a letter from the church, basically saying that overflow parking is available in their lot.
Now, they didn't necessarily say you had to get it, but we knew that you had already had contact with them, so.
True. Just throw there.
So,
Just so everybody knows, the building inspector had come up with 53, but then there was some
56. Yeah.
56. And then you noticed that there were 8 too many in the
Yeah, so
calculation.
it's somewhere, it's around 50 parking spots
Right.
that they want.
And we actually want 30, right? So when designing the project, we had calculated 30 with the chief's assistance as like what's actually expected on a day-to-day basis. Area in town, heat island, the town is sustainable and so forth, so.
So, I don't know if that's basically, they're looking for a letter from the church that says yes. So the planning board will allow us to use, if the church is accepting of it, they'll allow us to use their parking lot as overflow parking, so we don't have to put 20 plus more spots in the project. So it's just a matter of getting a letter from the church that says that they're on board. So I think that's something we can take care of.
Yeah, we'll have, one of the trustees will be meeting, he was gonna meet with us today to further discuss some of that, but had a previous engagement that he couldn't move or reschedule, so he's gonna come out next week, and we'll be in contact before next week's working group meeting as well, just to, make sure that we're all on the same page and the expectations are understood and,
Okay, PV infrastructure.
Yep, we had a good meeting with Revision Energy. The one thing that they would like to see from the town is basically a letter. They have an agreement that I forwarded, and I can actually ask them to resend that to me because I think it might have been a weird agreement. But basically, it should be a straight PPA agreement, right? That if you sign that, they will actually design the system for you, design the infrastructure with us as the design team, tell you exactly how many panels you can get up on the building, tell you exactly what the kilowatt output will be for that array. It's a nominal amount of money, so, a few thousands. And if they end up getting the bid, like if you go out to bid for this PPA, or I know you've worked in town with Revision before, so whatever mechanism you use to hire them, if they were actually hired to do the solar panels, they give you that money back. But if if the project ends up going to another power purchase agreement company or provider, then they would keep that money as design assistance. So I can send that to you. We did have a good meeting with them. They told us exactly what they'd be looking for this project.
And what's the timeline that we would need to bring them on to do that design?
Towards the end of the job, I mean, the design is pretty simple. I mean, they've kind of gone through it with us all. And it would more or less be just checking that. But if we could get them signed up, like, let's say in September sometime, so maybe at the September meeting, if I get the document from them that they would want signed from you that has that few $1,000 amount, you can take a look at that and decide. And then I think getting it in September would be fine. We already have, in that discussion with them, the team looked at the mechanical room, right? We've got the mechanical room up there. We've got plenty of space, because these are just wall-mounted items, if you will. We'd rather put them in that mechanical room, lined up along the wall. These are inverters and things like that. We also have the electrical room on the other side of the building. So 2 different options of where we can put this stuff. Revision Energy would also put it outside on the roof, which is kind of preferred. Or have to the panels, they just get up on the roof and they have access to everything. But putting it inside means if you ever wanted to get to the panels, you don't have to go up on the roof. So we can send that along.
Okay.
It was a good meeting.
Was that part of the Mass Save meeting, or is that a separate?
That was a separate meeting.
Okay. And so this is really for them to do a design so that whether we go move forward or not, the right infrastructure is in the building?
Yeah, we want to make sure that we have a note on the drawing that just basically says, don't put anything here to the contractor during their coordination of the work. We also want to make sure we have the pathways available, so we would probably put in a couple of conduit that go from the inverter locations up to the roof, an actual weatherhead up on the roof, so that if the panels do go in, you're not poking holes through a new roof. You're not trying to figure out where can these pieces of electrical equipment go. It'll all be sort of ghosted out on the drawings, if you will, as a future installation.
Any other?
Andy Bakanowski has his hand up.
Oh, Mr. Bakanowski, you have something you'd like to add?
Hi, guys. Not that I'm an expert at PPAs, but I've looked at a lot of them, and I would be really, concerned about the length of the PPA. And the one reason why is that given 25 years of working on solar projects, the technology changes about 8 to 10 years on average. The last 5 years, we've seen some huge improvements in panel technology. So I guess the question is, the timing of when this stuff goes in. Are we going to be getting, I'll say, new old stuff, or are we going to get new stuff? And obviously, that will affect the actual output of the system. In regards to running conduit up to the roof, we did this at the Freeman. That was part of because the system that's up there, that system the town does own. And we do get a benefit from the green credits for that. Not as much as it could be, but it's good enough. So I guess the question is that would there be an option to put any ground mounted or even some canopies as well? And should that be considered in the design as well? Part of the reason why I'm asking this too is that the Green Communities Act has some new information coming out, and there's a meeting on the 13th of September. I'm going to listen to
Working with the town to put an array over your parking lot at the police station.
Okay.
So the answer is yes. They can also, Andy, to your point, they can wrap that into the part of the PPA. So in other
Yep.
words, you may hire a company that not only provides all the solar panels, but they provide the support, basically the canopy, if you will, the structure itself, to put that on there. I mean, those are deep conversations that you want to have at Revision Energy. For them to do something like that, they're looking at a significant amount of solar. We have experience with them doing prior, but they're looking to max, at that point, if they're gonna be it's also a cost to the town, right? So what is that cents per kilowatt that you're paying Revision Energy as part of the power purchase agreement? Obviously, it increases the scope of the whole job. So you do have a parking lot on the fire station. It is in the front of the building. I mean, we'd have to take a look at your bylaws. I don't know how the police station situations, but I thought about, he has implied to me that was a possibility going on over there. And as far as infrastructure, Andy, we could easily, run some more conduit over to the parking lot as well, since we are already running some conduit over there for the electric charging stations. So I think into it. And
Yeah.
I think getting
I agree. I agree. And I think just as long as people realize that this has to be a flexible design, and I'm saying this because, one, I'm not an architect, but I've worked on enough municipal projects where buildings have been built and then solar has gone on, shortly after, or actually funding was available during construction. And I'll give a few sites down on the Cape. If you know the Yarmouth Fire Station as well as the Yarmouth DPW building, worked on those projects, and solar went on very quickly after the fire station was done, and it's being put on the DPW, or at least planning stages right now. So yeah, it's a little bit of a choreography, complicated dance sometimes, and I guess the only last point I want to make is that realize that through a PPA that the town can get tax revenue from the equipment that's on there, because the town does not own that, and that's something that would have to be looked at too. It's anybody that does a PPA or leases equipment. In my 13 years in the Board of Assessors tells me that this sometimes works for people and sometimes doesn't work for people. So this is something that has to be looked at really, really closely. So.
I think to that point,
Thank you.
The other thing that Revision Energy will do is a pro forma. Because I think, like Andy said, if you decide you're going to allow them to own the system for 5 years, then in year 6, you buy it out. They get the 30% tax credit, and your buyout is 30% less, right, for the whole system. That makes a big difference in terms of the life of the power purchase agreement. And when you look at the amount of money that you can possibly save over 20 years, when you buy your PPA run 20 years, it may be in your benefit to do so. But that's all it generates, and Revision Energy, that's what I mean by they'll do this link it for your site.
Wasn't there, if we're able to do the canopies, doesn't that make the whole project almost net zero?
So we did a back of the napkin calculation that says solar on the roof is not going to get you to net zero. But if you did fill up, basically build over the parking lot, you get a lot closer. And quite frankly, we could take what Revision Energy does for their study to tell you how much solar you could possibly fit on the site. And then we can give that to our energy engineers and have them tell us if that gets us to where we want to be.
Okay.
It's going to get you a lot closer, let's put it that way.
All right. Anything else anyone wants to discuss? Okay. Thank you. Please discuss citing comparison memo.
Yep. And I apologize, I haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay. We'll move that. So, but that's just formalizing.
It's just
what we
formalizing the
discussed last
conversation that
meeting.
we've had, and we'll be able to post it to your website, so when people have frequently asked questions, they can go there and see, why we're using the siding that being proposed as opposed to other systems.
Please discuss design review board response. Aaron, I don't know if that's anything you want to weigh in on, or I think I asked last meeting if there's anything official that we need from the design review board. I think you said not really, right? Is that to me?
Yeah, I said, hold on.
Oh,
You
Talk, see if
Try
Aaron
again.
can hear you.
oh, Aaron, can you hear me now?
He's talking, but we don't hear
Yeah, we
him.
don't hear him.
Can you hear me now?
Okay,
Oh, yes.
You got me now?
yeah.
Yep, we do.
Yep.
All right, beautiful. The design review order,
Thirty. I don't think we need to talk about the status. So the meeting was last night, which a
Correct.
lot of information came out of.
Yeah. So, I don't know where to start except to say that there were several things that they'd like us to put on the drawings, which we're gonna put on the drawings, it's not a problem. There were a couple of items that came up that would mean a redesign of the site or an application for a waiver. So the way that I understand the waiver works is we just formally put in our response to them that we want to seek a waiver. We discuss it at the planning board, and then they either approve or deny the waiver. And one of the items for the waiver is the notion that the rain leaders coming off of the building, which is both internal drains as well as external rain leaders, goes into a completely separate drainage system than the surface water coming off the site and the parking lots. It is in the regulation for the town that rainwater from a building goes into a dry well. So what a dry well does is, obviously, it goes in there, collects it all, and then it just seeps into the ground. We're putting a very similar situation into a surface-mounted, a surface detention basin, which is the bioswale and the biodetention area. So in effect, we're doing exactly the same thing without buying the structure, if you will. But if we need to do that, what that means is then we have to provide more underground structures, right? So these dry chambers are actual structures which require ledge removal, things like that, at least on the western side of the building. If we decided to go that route, we can also ask for a waiver for this, but if we decide to go that route, it obviously increases the construction cost and increases the design cost, so we'd have to take a look at what that means to redesign. So that's just one of the items.
And so is the plan to respond with, this is how we're managing?
Yeah. So
leader.
we responded to them last night verbally, what we wanted, what we're doing. There was a lot of sort of back and forth about, just best practices, things like that. There's obviously two philosophies, right? One philosophy is a sustainable way, which is these, the bio detention areas and the bioswales and the rain gardens. Another one is to just put it all underground. And so obviously there's a cost too, right? Putting everything underground just costs more money. So I would say that one's not better than the other, just from my own, for what it's worth. And our engineers are pretty satisfied with the design the way it is now, meets all state regulations and so forth. It's just whether or not you want to entertain doing it that way. And we could ask for a waiver. If they deny a waiver, then we need to put it else. Viewer simply brought it up because it's obviously a regulation note. He had suggested we submit for a waiver. I think he's also, I don't want to speak for him, but, of the opinion that it's 50-50, right? It's either do it this way or do it that way.
Ron, if I could jump in there.
Yep.
I think what was missing is a clear, concise explanation from the engineer as to what the approach was in the design, and that the design approach is equal to or better than the required approach. Right? And I think if we can make that statement, then our waiver ask becomes a lot easier for them to accept, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going to meet tomorrow with the engineers and just talk about what we want to do to come back for a response. we did tell them that we would be back at their September 13th meeting. So we want to do this relatively quickly. We want to get the information back to them relatively quickly. And Aaron will do exactly like you recommend. You know, we'll explain exactly why we're doing what we're doing, and see what happens. The second thing that came up is very similar, right? So, one way to separate oil from water from a parking lot is to actually put it in an underground structure called an oil-water separator. Another way to separate oil and any other contaminants from water is to feed them through a natural series of areas, which actually cleans the water before it then seeps into the ground. And that's the entire point to the bioswales and the biodetention area, is that we are treating and cleaning the water before it seeps into the ground. Again, it just happens to be a regulation that says you need to use an underground oil-water separator in all the parking lots. Same thing, Aaron, I think what we want to do is just explain very clearly. I think we attempted to do that last evening, but put it in writing so everybody understands. And I do think that, again, it's just a 50-50, you know, one's not better than the other because they're both going to work. One may be more sustainable because if you have a problem and it's a surface system, you can see what the problem is. If your oil-water separator is failing or the tank is cracked or something happens on the really don't going on.
Treated by, if it's so.
What I was trying last night was that systems are set up, there shouldn't be any water in there, you know? So when it snows and you get a hard rain or anything like that, you know, and it's frozen, the idea is that it doesn't stay frozen. And any water that comes in there is gonna seep into the ground because of the media that's underneath it. So in that same vein, the technical advisor, Beta, they had actually said, we want to see what that soil is, right? So we actually went out and did some test pits and provided them with the makeup of the soil. So I think last night he was in agreement that the materials that are on site, the materials that we're bringing into the site to build these bioretention areas, it's not going to be a factor. But that's always hard to describe when people obviously observe snow and ice on the ground, you know, and we're going to get a better explanation out of our meeting on Tuesday, and we're going to try to put, you know, sort of not only an explanation, but some examples and some situational explanations that basically make the case for using these. I mean, obviously, it meets all state regulations, and the state is aware of the conditions in Massachusetts, so we just want to make
Ron,
sure.
if I could jump in again.
Yep.
Sorry. Similar to my comments previous one, I think, do it a little bit. I got the impression that some of what was being said last night is it looks like maybe the design was cutting corners, or maybe something was actually forgotten in the design, which I don't think is true, but I'm not sure that the explanation we gave covered that, right? So similar to what you just said, I think if we again explain that the way the system is designed meets all the codes and regulations and actually performs just as well, if not better than, you know, system A, it's just a completely different system, and it performs, it's system B and it performs in a different fashion, but it achieves the same function.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, I got the same impression last night. I think that I think the planning board was just, I don't know that they necessarily won't eventually agree with what we're doing, but I think that they weren't convinced at the explanation.
Yeah,
given.
and again, that's another item that I'm bringing up because that will add to the construction cost if we don't get the waiver, and it will add to the design fees to redesign that system. And we have to think creatively how we do this without actually making it even more expensive by having to put those underground structures in the areas of the ledge that we know, you know, the ledge is located. Because we're going down a certain depth to put the parking lots in. To put all those underground structures in, you have to obviously go deeper. So.
Yeah, I mean, the onus is on the civil engineer to show how they're meeting the town bylaws.
Yeah.
Right, with this.
Right, so the
So
town.
if they're not following it to the letter, they need to at least provide how they're meeting the same intent.
Right, that's what we need to do, because the letter does say oil water separator,
Right,
period.
right.
So, Bader is correct in that.
So, yeah, so I mean, if Nitch proposed something else, that's fine, but we'd need to be able to convince the planning board of why it's the same.
Mhm.
Okay.
But again, Ron, I think we're not trying to not provide an oil water separator. We're just providing a different way of separating the oil from the water.
Right, we're trying to do it in a more sustainable way, that's actually less maintenance.
So we're providing the oil water separation
Mm-hmm. Yep.
in this fashion.
One of the other things that came up, which is gonna obviously drive some more cost, is the monitoring well. So many of these bioswales and biodetention areas, what happens is when you get water in there, it seeps into the ground. It seeps into the ground not only because of the plants that are there, but because of the soils that are underneath. If, for whatever reason, and I think this is mentioned in the drainage study, which was brought up last night, if for whatever reason water in there hours after a rain event or something like that, you know what's wrong. So you can rake the bottom, see if you got sediment clogging anything or anything. You know that there's something wrong. With an underground Cultac system or any kind of underground detention system, you don't know that there's a problem until things stop bubbling up and backflowing onto the surfaces and things like that. So again, from an engineering point of view, they want to have a monitoring well so that you can always monitor where the groundwater is, so that you know if there's any standing water in there, you know where the groundwater is. Again, we need to explain that in a much better way to essentially say that this is the way these systems are monitored, which is, if you rake the bottom and it's not going away, you can actually tell if it's groundwater. And the engineer can explain that a little bit better. Otherwise, we need to put the monitoring well in, which we understand actually has to be put in by the geotech engineer. And then the town has to hire somebody to monitor it. So I think what we heard last night was that you have these already in town. And if that's the case, you spending the money to be monitoring well or getting a waiver. And I think this is one of the items last night throughout the conversation that I get the feeling we're not getting a waiver on this.
Yeah, I got that same impression.
So we're gonna get you
Right,
yeah.
but again, Ron, I think, sorry, I'm going to keep beating this drum. I think what message that wasn't delivered is that the method by which we are treating stormwater is different than the method which is commonly used in the town. Right, so all of these comments, all three of these points of items were comments made about the traditional method of treating stormwater in town, right, because that's what's known. The system that's designed for the fire station treats it in a different fashion. And so if we can explain that to them in a successful, cohesive fashion to say that all three of these items are related and all three of them are addressed by the way that this system functions, and we agree that the questions that you raised are parts of the other system, and if we were using that system, we would be installing those parts. But full agreement, but we are not using that system. We're using this other system, and it functions fine without all of these parts.
Yeah, and we can certainly do that. We can formally request a waiver and be prepared to put it in.
I think the point should be made that if they're gonna grant waivers for the other two, but try to not grant a waiver for the monitoring well, I can say that it's useless. If you're gonna be just looking at the open swale for water in it, you already said that. And I feel like it's just a kind of a waste of money, a waste of taxpayers' money to force the monitoring well if waivers are gonna be granted for the other items.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely gonna request the waiver. I mean,
Right, no, I know.
Yeah.
I don't know how strongly it can be worded if they're gonna grant the other two, which you made it sound like they were more in favor of, but they were not willing to kind of entertain the monitoring well.
Oh, I don't want to give that impression. What I want to
Okay.
say is that they were pretty adamant that they want the design changed.
Okay.
But we were at least having a conversation about the other two items.
Okay.
We did not have a conversation about the monitoring well. I think the question was, yeah, we want we want the monitoring well. And so I'm planning board, but yes, as we think, say that of all the things they asked for, and there was, to just kind of put on the drawings, if you will, these are the things that would have implications. And I
Cost
believe that the other item, which is separating, having two systems on site. So we did read the regulations further today, and we believe that if we did the dry welling to that extent for the roof drains, then we actually cover the other item, which was two completely separate systems, one for the roof and one for the site. And so we're again going to get clarification on that from Rich and be prepared to say, just like Erin's saying, this is the way that the design meets the intent of that as part of a waiver. But if we have to have two completely separate systems, then what we need to do is obviously redesign. And that goes straight to underground. Like, there's no other way to treat it if we're treating the on-site, if we're treating the on-surface water in above-ground detention and bioswales, the other one has to be underground. So that would again be more cost and more design.
When applying for these waivers, can costs be used as a reason for it? You know, I know we're already kind of tipping the scales on what the public's willing to accept as far as the cost for this. And I'd hate to see it get voted down because we added a couple $100,000 to put a system underground when it could have been done similarly without putting it underground.
We'll ask the engineer for a probable, cost.
Yeah.
But basically, it's just just an opinion of cost that
Yeah.
they would provide from what they see on some other projects.
Yep.
And we'll have to reach out to the geotech engineer because she actually told me that she's not aware of a monitoring well that she's put in a while or ever for this type of system.
Yeah, yeah.
At what point do we have to have these waivers? Is designing the
Cross fingers.
Yeah. They don't have to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they meet twice a month, correct? No? Once a month? Okay.
Planning board meets once a month or as needed.
so
So-
then what's the limit, like, if they meet October 13th and
But,
provide a
but,
decision then,
but
is
again,
that still enough time?
No, I think we really want a decision on September 13th. I mean, we spoke to the engineering team today, and I think they're on the same page. We're gonna need clear direction by September 13th. Just because some of this stuff.
The onus is on us to convince, the right people that it's the right thing to do, right? So that going into the 13th, it's more of a formality than a question mark.
This is the vision the town has given us since day one, right? Build the most cost-effective fire station that you can on the site. And so, obviously, with the site conditions and the design and the idea that this is a green community, we did take a green approach to the drainage systems. The request that the town made for ease of maintenance, if you will. Because the only way to fix these underground structures is to get a truck in there and vacuum these things out. Or dig down and stuff. These on so just as Erin said, the explanations are such a way that they see that we're not doing anything wrong. We're doing just something different, and get their read on it. Get their opinion. Because, and that's what I mean by, Beta during the conversations last evening was, what I could tell is it was, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, from his comments, except for the monitoring well. So,
Well, I guess that was my point too, is that if they're okay with bioswale, the need for the monitoring well isn't there, so it seems kind of silly to put something in just because a piece of paper says you have to have it.
okay. Planning board.
From the chief about, it just says hazmat letter from chief is what I wrote down. I don't remember the whole wording of the provision, but it's that there's,
I think that was essentially what the fire department has in the building.
right,
Because we talked about it earlier today. And, for materials and if, I think if the chief has, puts his MSDS sheets together and that gets submitted, that should take care of anything they're concerned about quote-unquote hazardous materials within the building. It's more for companies that are coming in new, as opposed to a fire station that's been here, for many years, but it's again, it's part of the regulations, so.
and that's something you can provide. Okay. Any other discussion on the planning board meeting from anyone? Please discuss the result of the audio-visual meeting on August 24th.
So we met with a company in Chelmsford, and they presented options to the chief and a few other members of the station. And
IT.
yep, and Ton from the town's IT group, and basically showed what's available, what's up and coming, and they've agreed to basically put a number on the systems that they were recommending. The chief got to actually see them, got to see how they work, got to see it live in action, and so now we know exactly what the chief wants in terms of infrastructure and things like that. So, Chief, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, it was actually a really good visit, be able to see, some of the systems and the components that, we've only discussed in theory. I think we were able to narrow down, especially things for the training room in terms of, going monitors versus projectors, things of that nature. And, one of the conclusions that I was happy about is that I think some of the things that they're leaning towards and we're leaning towards in terms of after seeing these things, seeing the monitors versus projectors and things like that, we're going with a more affordable option, but also it is definitely a more user-friendly and, not having to worry about in the room and kind of things where if you ever got to look at just call up. So we lit all of that and are looking at, at monitors that will accomplish, what we would like to have in terms of being able to do training, being able to do meetings, even things like this, similar to this via Zoom or other platforms where, it makes the room extremely versatile and would allow us to do things, more efficiently than we do now in terms of our EMS continuing education, and those kind of things would all be, set up and really user-friendly to use, which right now is, very tricky and difficult, and we don't always have success. So it was very informative and good to put eyes on, what the solutions are, and to have Ton and our other IT representatives there to be able to, discuss, okay, what is, what's a bell and whistle and a smoke screen versus what's going to be really user-friendly and what's going to really be, functional for us and affordable, which, was great to have Ton's input and guidance while we were there to settle on and to, kind of get the direction we want to go.
Any discussion on that? All right, please discuss meetings with advisory board and energy committee. The advisory board, I had reached out to Brian Beachkowski, who he attended our last meeting. I don't think he was able to make it tonight, but they are up to speed on the project. And then I know Andy Bekanowski is here tonight on behalf of the energy committee, so we're thankful for that. And it sounded like he was going to attend the Mass Save meeting.
Yes, yep. So we have the Mass Save meeting coming up.
Is that date set?
It is. I think it's the 14th. Yes, the 14th. Mass Save is 1 o'clock. Sorry, frog in my throat. Yeah, it should be a good meeting. I mean, what we explained to Andy, a couple of emails back and forth, was just sort of updating him on the status of the project, that it is all electric, which is what Mass Saves looks for. It is in their pathway 1, which is the zero net energy ready pathway, which provides you basically the most incentives that Eversource offers in any kind of program. And that, short of having a geothermal system, we should be getting as much money as they can provide, short of having a geothermal system.
Andy, is there anything you want to add? I see you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, the meeting on the 13th, the Leading by Example group, that's going to introduce the funding that's available for municipalities, and this is associated with some state funding. And then also there's another, it has to do with the Department of Energy funding, that they're looking at electrification of municipalities as well as large facilities, and they're primarily looking at military facilities as well as prison facilities and a few other, I'll call it compound type facilities, but there is reports of something like $425 million that's available for municipalities, and with an emphasis on institutions, and whether institutions means schools or it means public safety, I don't know. It's their clarification was sent out today about that's on the 9th of September, so I don't have any more, but I'm going to see what the town is available to get, and I have a sneaking suspicion that there's going to be a lot of people applying for this, so we may have to jump pretty quickly for this. And again, I don't know if there's a required commitment from the town to fund 10%, 20%, 2%, or it's basically a grant.
We lost your audio, Andy.
Oh,
But yeah, we've got to get that.
Oh.
There it is.
ask him to repeat
Yeah, if you can repeat the last 30 seconds of what you said.
after
I'm sorry.
September
I'm sorry. Did I? Okay.
After
So
September 9th.
there's, I think there was the meeting on the 13th of September, by example, with state organization, which is going to talk about the green communities funding, since Norfolk is a green community, that we're eligible for additional funding. And then there's another one that's on the 9th of September with the Department of Energy that's looking at institutional funding, and whether that means schools or it does mean public safety. I don't know. They sent out another clarification email today, and I still don't know the exact reasons, but we'll hopefully find that out. But again, I don't know if the town is required to kick in 10 or 20%, or it's simply just you apply, and if it's accepted on merit, it's simply a straight grant. So I guess stay tuned, but at least it's another funding source. And some of the things I've talked about, and whether it means going geothermal, and if we can get that funded or partially funded, is it worthwhile? So we'll see.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks.
Any other discussion? Okay. Please discuss an update on fall town meeting. So I reached out to the town moderator and told him that I would make a similar presentation like I have at the last two town meetings. Really just get up, they give all the committees a floor to talk for really as long as you want, to kind of update anybody who is attending town meeting on where you stand, so I plan to do that. I think it'd be a good idea to set the boards up again, and so I let him know that while I probably wouldn't have any slides to show, we'd want to set the boards up again in the foyer or lobby. So he seemed fine with that. I don't know if that's his call, but he didn't say negatively about it. So, please review an update on proprietary items.
Yeah, so we're gonna put a letter together. And when we say proprietary, it doesn't mean that the town's locked into any kind of contract, right? So this isn't like a proprietary system that only, some guy in Canada can come fix twice a year for $1 million an hour. This is proprietary systems, like just as an example. There's only one company that makes fire poles, right? So we have to bid that as one company, a sole source, if you will, which in Massachusetts, because of the competition regulations and the Mass General laws, you're supposed to have 3 equals. So it gives everybody a certain sense of competition. What we're going to ask the committee to do is sign off on several items, one of which is the fire pole. Another one is a type of flooring that we want to use. Another one is the alternate we have for the flooring. We're going to have an epoxy floor in the apparatus bay, and we're looking at doing some PVC tiles, which are supposedly a lot less money. And so we're going to bid that as a bid alternate to see if that deduct is what we think it is. And then there's just some other items on there that we want you to sign off on, if you will. So we'll send that list out as well. And what the list actually is it's a letter that explains exactly statute, chapter, and verse of why we're doing it and what the benefit is to the community, what the benefit is to the town.
And you as a committee will review it and then vote on it. We'll have it for record, and we'll include that in the documents.
Okay. You think that'll be ready for the next meeting, or is that going to?
Oh, absolutely. We went over it. We went over the finalization of it today at the working group meeting.
Okay. The question is your hand from before.
Sorry, I bumped the mouse. I put that back on. No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Please review pre-qual RFQ status update.
Yes, there was a little bit of a glitch getting the advertisement in the Central Register, but it is out. Originally, the responses for both the general contractor and the file submitters was going to be due on the 8th of September, which I had reported last meeting, but now they are going to be on the 13th, so it's not that much farther out. Ultimately, we'll have our review complete by the 30th and get letters out by mid-October, which will be in plenty of time for bidding purposes. Just to give an update as of through today, because we are still getting requests for the RFQ. We've got 8 general contractors that have requested the document, and then all of our file sub-bid categories, with the exception of elevator, which unfortunately is not a surprise, but we have multiple requests for the documents. 7 from the mason, 5 from the painter, 7 from HVAC, 6 from electrical. So, and again, they're still coming in. They've still got a bunch of time to request the package and then get it back into us. And we are having the proposals sent to our office in Weymouth, and then I'll bring them in, and there'll be a couple of hard copies, but we'll distribute the electronic copy to the subcommittee members. So far so good. Probably have one addenda. Did find a couple typos within the documents, but there was nothing that is going to change anything overall for what they have to submit.
So when you send that to the subcommittee, so Justin and I and Ron, and is it just gonna be, here's all the packages we received, or does Vertex kind of summarize them or do anything to them first?
We have a whole tracking sheet. There's going to be a lot of information that will help go through the packages. Technically, you're supposed to look through them all, but we'll summarize a lot of it, and then we'll have a meeting and sort of go over it. We'll have a remote meeting and go through each category. But like I had said before, there'll be a lot of. I'm anticipating a lot of responses.
Yeah, sounds like it. So the numbers you rattled off, that's just who has pulled the proposal, right? Not necessarily responses that you've already received.
No, I looked at our tracking sheet this morning, and those numbers are subcontractors and general contractors that have requested and received the documents already.
But they haven't submitted anything necessarily.
No one's submitted yet, no.
Please review an update on video talking points by Donna Jones. So Donna was nice enough to come tonight. So if you recall, we had talked about maybe making an informational video, myself, the chief. I think we talked about having you in it, Ron, talk about some of the design aspects. So I forwarded some topics that I thought might be good to touch on. And so I don't know if anyone else here has any, I know I didn't send this to everybody, so I'll kind of read them off, but if anybody else has any topics you think we should touch on, and then, Don, if there's a way you think we should approach this, or if anybody else has a thought on approaching it. So my kind of 6 or 7 topics was, why is the fire station needed? I know we already had an existing conditions video that came out, but I think it might kind of give a nice intro to the project. Fits to the community, incorporation of green and sustainable design best practices, cost reductions and streamlining the design, multiple, space with multiple functions, touch on that topic, touch on the debt exclusion, touch on the timing of the debt exclusion and special town meeting, and why we're proposing the timeline that we are, and then maybe some of the, we may not necessarily need to go through every frequently asked, some of the popular ones. If there's anything else you guys want to touch on, or if that kind of captures it.
Well, I think the information that Andy provided with us is, we should really touch on how this is built for the future, and it's a really sustainable, and could be, quite frankly, a model for sustainability in the community. Especially if you decide to go the PPA route.
So I guess, where do we take it from here? Donna?
Hi. I do agree about that, emphasize on the energy part of it, because the resistance to going green was it's going to cost more money. So if we can show that this is a benefit, that would be great. It was listed, the cost of reductions, and I'd also like to add what was left out. What we're doing out without. Something that sticks out for me is windows that open. They can't even get fresh air inside a conference room. A summary of the previous project, the public safety.
Yeah, you're talking about the police station project.
Right. It was a public safety project with 2 buildings at 2 locations. There's a 2.5-hour video meeting explaining it with a 30-slide deck that covered it, and it'd just be good to have 1 or 2 pages available for the public to access. And and I'm not saying this committee might not be the one to provide that. It may be more town administrator or accounting
Yeah, I think,
or facilities.
Yeah, I saw your email on that before this meeting. I think, I mean, Jeff probably doesn't have the background. It really, I think the previous town administrator put together some nice slides that kind of summarized it, but I don't know if there's, I think what you're maybe looking for is if someone in the town has something a little more concise than 30 slides that kind of talks about, here's what happened in the previous project, you know, why there were cost overruns and how we ended up with $3 million left to kind of brings us to where we are today. I don't know if anything like that exists in the town other than that slideshow that I've seen, but
I'll see if I can dig anything up around our office.
If we do show that, I think it is good to show, like, how did we get here? But we also should balance that with what are we doing to prevent us from being in that same position again with this project?
it's good.
Yeah, I think highlighting how this process has been very different and how we're going about getting to that end result is very different. You know, the number of steps and the number of vetting the number of steps and the amount of vetting that's been done each step along the way before we even get to proposing what the final product is going to be or what the final product is even going to cost. You know, this process has been a lot different, and I think along with being this project potentially being a model for how we build sustainably and responsibly from a green standpoint or an energy standpoint, and reducing our carbon footprint per se, it also can be a model for how we do large-scale projects in the town moving forward. Because I think one of the things that is beneficial to the taxpayers and the various stakeholders within our town, there has been those steps of vetting and justification of need and demonstration of, hey, this is why things are the way they are, and this is how we got to this point in terms of, and then getting to firmer, more solid estimates, and to a point where you're able to bid and have, firm numbers in hand, rather than there being a large, number of unknowns, if you will. We're going to be able to go into this hopefully with, well, we will have firm numbers in hand, and hopefully that is, I think, in my opinion, it's a better way to go about a project, rather than having, hey, we have a theoretical and we have an estimate or a number we think that it's going to work, but it's not even close, or it's way high or way low. We're going to know, period, what this is going to cost, and what that impact is going to be to the taxpayers and the stakeholders in town.
So Donna, I don't know if you want to take these kind of bullet points and put together a rough outline, and then we can figure out how we're splitting up the different topics and set a date to do it.
One thing is the cost of the display boards. There's a different citizen that asked for all the information about the project, and so we shared online the PDFs of things. And one thing was the invoices today, and I glanced at cost of boards were $140. Was that per board?
Yeah, no, I
Display
think
board.
that was total. And but we're,
For one set?
what we've been doing, right, so what we've been doing is sending these to Allegra. So the town's printing company has actually been doing all the printing. And those invoices just go straight to the town.
Not to the project?
No, I think the project does pay for it. Is that correct?
Yeah, it comes out of the $3
Comes out
million
of the-
that was left over from the previous project.
So if we had 140 for a full set,
Mhm.
times 10 sets, it's only a couple of thousand.
No, I think what we should do is get in touch with Allegra and tell them this is the board that we want, because I think it's one board that we're printing. So it's one board times 10 of them. So what we can do is reach out to Allegra and just ask, how much is it per board? And then Well, we could just ask, what is it for the 10 boards? I mean, they're printing the 10 boards. So this one's gonna be a little bit more expensive than the last ones, because we wanna do it on a foam core and using paper and ink that is weatherproof. So that if you get caught in the rain, you're not down to 9 boards. So we'll reach out and we can get that number.
Is that one board that's weatherproof and,
The 10 of them will be
Others are-
weatherproof. Right. So we're getting,
so I'm not sure.
So what we're doing is we have one summary board that's gonna be in 10 locations around town. Right, so that one, we're just getting 10 of this exact same board, and we can let you know what that cost is gonna be.
I just wanted to,
That needs
if,
to be passed through. West, right?
What's that?
Where you're putting these boards, that needs to be approved.
Right, I mean, to put the boards up yet, so it can put these boards up. But that still has to, that bridge still needs to be crossed, unfortunately. I mean, I guess if it's a significant cost difference, we could, I think there's only one board that we're looking to put outdoors at the transfer station. We could look at doing standard boards in the other locations.
Sure.
And that 140, that original 140 was like 8 boards. Like, it was all the boards we currently have
Right.
cost that 140. So we have, I think it's 8 boards we currently have.
Yeah, I mean, and we've used them
Yeah.
multiple
We've used
times.
them, yeah, we've used them several times, yeah.
okay, I just wanted to, especially in ignored because of the cost posters. And then another thing that would help people, not necessarily from this committee, is how the tax rate gets set. So I know that I know the process, but most people won't. The assessors make a recommendation to the select board works with financial to say, present us a balanced budget, and the point of what are our options to pay for a major project?
So we.
And it's all up to the taxpayers to decide.
Right, we touched on it a little bit last meeting, so I don't want to get into it too much again, but we will be looking for a debt exclusion. We really can't set the amount that is until we have a bid in hand. Is that correct, Todd?
I'd just be making guesses.
Right, so, I know Jeff put together a rough number for the last meeting that was helpful in knowing the range that we'll be in, but I think we're not at the point where we know a definitive number yet.
That may be something good to put on the question and answer page if it's not already up, just like a one-page document that explains like exactly that. How does the tax rate get set? Not what are we trying to change of it, not what are we asking for, just the background of like, how are you taxed? What factors weigh into that?
So if we can just get back to the topic of the video, Donna,
Yeah.
so
It's okay.
uh,
I'll check with the studio, suggest some dates and times.
yeah, I think that'd be good. I don't know if you want to organize the bullets that I gave into what you think is a flow, and then you can
Sure.
send it to the chief, Ron and I, or you can
Okay.
send it to me, I'll send it to them. And we
Okay.
can figure out how we're splitting up. I mean, it may even be something, some of these debt exclusion topics, maybe we want to have the new town administrator involved too, but we can figure that out, so. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please discuss community outreach event on September 11th at the fire station. So we had talked about this, I think, a couple meetings ago, maybe having the board set up, or you're having an event on the 11th at the
Yeah,
fire
we
station.
do, we have the remembrance, and do a little ceremony every year. And, we can have the board set up front, when we do that. and be available to give tours and then even, discuss some of the finer points of the project as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, what is the event exactly?
We usually set up, we pull the trucks out, obviously, we try to coordinate it, and statewide, you coordinate around the time of the first plane hitting, you do the remembrance through kind of the sequence of, the events that occurred. And, we do a moment of silence, we do, in essence, it's just a remembrance protocol that the state actually sends out, and we just follow that. We follow that to a T, standing at attention either in full Class A's or our bunker gear. Usually the department we choose to stand in bunker gear, we also have on the actual day of the 9/11, that is, we set out an FDNY helmet as well, that we set out there in front of the flag, in front of the little memorial that's in front of the station. And we do the remembrance there. It's not a huge, production, if you will. It's more intimate and somewhat low key, but it is, we have had members of the public come out and, either participate or observe, and we're absolutely welcome. Everyone's welcome to do that. I think the thing that's different this year and years past is it's normally been on a weekday, so it hasn't always been, a ton of participation, but I think with it being on a Sunday or weekend, it, has the potential to be more activity there that day, and we can certainly encourage participation and have the boards there so the public can get a glimpse of what we're trying to do on a day where hopefully it's a little more convenient for them to to come by the station and also participate in a ceremony honoring those that sacrificed their lives on 9/11.
Did you say, what time does it start on the 11th?
You know what, I have to look at, I don't know the exact time, I have to get the,
8:30 to 9:30,
it's in that range, yeah, yes.
start to finish.
Okay. Maybe it's something that can be put on would that be on the message board outside fire station leading up to it, or?
I can get it put on the board, I can talk to Blair and see if we can do that for sure. And we'll definitely, we can post it on the, on our website and webpage and everything. If that's something we want to definitely do. I didn't want to post anything before we confirmed or vote, decided what we
Or,
wanted to do.
I mean, if it gets, I don't know the method to get it posted on the Facebook page either, the town Facebook page. I don't think we necessarily need to sell it as a fire station
Right.
event.
It's just
I
a,
think
it's a remembrance, and it's.
remembrance, and if people come out and see the boards, hopefully they ask
Right,
questions.
yeah, we're not gonna like put, the boards will be available inside, in the lobby. The ceremony, or in the actual station, I would say the ceremony where we do the remembrance is gonna be dedicated strictly to that.
And then we had discussed other community events in October and November. I honestly don't remember if we talked about exact dates. I couldn't find it in my
This
notes.
Fire Prevention Week in October, that may be a good opportunity to display the boards if we're not doing something different.
You know when that is?
I think it's the second week.
Second week, I think, yes.
I'm pretty sure it's the second week.
And we usually coordinate our open house around that, either to kick it off or to end it, so, we'll.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if there was a kind of a localized location where maybe we could set something up for a day that week,
It's the 9th to the 15th of October is Fire Prevention Week.
which I think is Columbus Day.
I-
Yeah, I think. So maybe the Wednesday of that week, or is there a particular, when's your open house?
It's usually on the weekend, it's usually the Saturday, it's usually the Saturday.
So that'd be
At
the
the
end of
end.
that, because the 9th, I think, is a Sunday, so it'd be the end of the week.
Yep.
Yeah, and the 10th is Columbus Day.
All right, I'll put that down as a discussion topic at our next meeting then. Okay. Anything else on community outreach that anyone wants to discuss?
Suggestion? Maybe the current display boards on September 10th. Norfolk Small Business Association's taking over Town Hill. And I could ask or get you in contact with the person coordinating that. For 3 or 4 hours, small businesses will be around and visitors would walk up and say, have the person promote their business.
Sorry, I was distracted by a question that came up on Zoom.
No, that's okay. She was just, Discovery Day from the Small Business Association is gonna be on Town Hill, so there will be, all the small businesses will have
Booths.
booths on Town Hill to come, and she was just suggesting that if we had a table or somebody that could answer questions about the project with the boards.
Sure, what date did you say that was?
10.
September 10th. Starts at 4 p.m. It might be scheduled to go until 8.
I am not available that day. I don't know if the fire department can set something up or.
I'll look and see, I'll look at my calendar and see if I can be available, and then, at least for a portion of it, and then, talk with my staff too. At the very least, we can definitely get easels and put the boards up and have a presence there, I would say we should be able to have a presence there, and then, pending there's no calls or anything during the time, we should be.
But to address the question that was on the Zoom, the September 11th ceremony is separate. I mean, there's no promotion of there's no fire station committee meeting going on that day.
No.
The boards will be inside the building if people want to go in and look at them.
Right.
The ceremony is separate.
Yep.
So, okay. Please review project schedule, including special town meeting, debt exclusion ballot for discussion with select board on September 14th. So, Steve, I don't know if you would put together a draft schedule. I don't know if you want to walk.
I put together a draft schedule, because I had to make some assumptions that was part of the packet that you all have. And I went into a fair amount of detail, basically starting from where we are now and going through construction. But really, and I did that because if I was putting together a schedule, some of these questions may come up when we meet with the select board. But I think, again, some of the assumptions that I had to make was essentially when special town meeting would be. We sort of have a date set right now for general contractors bids being due on the 12th of December.
Want me to
Excuse me,
share
the 22nd of December?
I think is it not being shared on Zoom?
It's not on Zoom. You want me to share it on Zoom?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Okay. So again, going from the date that we have set for December 22nd, general contractor bids being due, you have to sort of coordinate the votes to make sure that you can award that contract within the 30 business days per Mass General Law. And then, what the interim town manager, Jeff Nutting, brought up last meeting was that if you don't do it ahead of time, you have to wait 35 days between the select board. Again, I put in, the fact that we're meeting with them on the 14th. We'll go over this concept and then request that they vote for that date at their next meeting, which I believe is the 12th of October. So, the other dates, like I said, are fill-in dates of things that, we are anticipating in our schedule. But the key dates are the select board date, the contracted bid date, and then what I'm, proposing as the special town meeting, and then I gave a range of when the debt exclusion ballot could be between the 15th, after the town meeting vote, up to the 28th, which would give us a few days before we would have to award. And then again, we go on to, providing notice to proceed to the contractor, and then, going through our construction phases, which I've essentially broken it up into phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 being our material procurement period of 2 months. Then phase 2 would be our construction of the new fire station. Going from April to June, April 23 to June of 24. And then our phase 3 would be demolition of the existing fire station and the completion of site work, running through September of 24, and then a period of a month and a half of punch lists and closeout.
So, I guess, if we can walk through, so, I mean, the benefit of this approach, right, is that we're getting bids in December, when typically general contracting and file subcontracting bids will be, the bids will be more advantageous to the town if we're bidding it over the winter, essentially. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Correct. I mean, there's a few things here. I mean, we want to go to the town meeting with bid in hand.
Right.
And, figuring special town meeting would be in January, as we had discussed. Bidding in December, that's where you have contractors that are looking to line up work for the beginning of the following year, potentially springtime. We're getting the bids out of the way prior to your Christmas, New Year's time period, where no one really wants to bid. You're going to probably not have as many bidders. And again, we're also pre-qualifying, so we're going to have specific contractors and file subbidders that will be allowed to bid. That also doesn't mean that they will definitely bid. It just means they're qualified too. So we have our bids in really before the holidays. It coincides with getting our special town meeting for sometime the beginning of January. Because again, they will only hold their bids for 30 business days. So, which essentially, it works out to be essentially the 3rd of February. There are a couple holidays that
So,
you don't count.
so is that in Mass General Law that it's,
Yes.
we can't have them hold the bids longer than 30 days?
You can ask, and they may do it.
Yeah.
But if we're just going by, for our purposes now, the letter of the law,
It's 30 days.
it's 30 business days,
And presumably.
including holidays
yeah,
and weekends.
Presumably, there might be some cost impact to the bids if.
Well, no, I mean, if it's imminent that you may, I've had instances in the past where the approval of the contract was going to be a few days beyond, a week or something. You ask the contractor, say, hey, you don't have a problem holding your bid for an extra week. Generally, they're going to say no because they've just won a job. But, we're not going to know that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to assume anything.
And I'd also like to add that there is a benefit to getting it done in 30 days. Given the procurement situations that are going on right now, many of the subs are not going to be inclined to hold that for any time longer, and that puts a lot of pressure on the general contractor to answer that question as to whether or not they're going to hold that bid. Prices continue to go up, and there's a lot of competition for procurement right now. So, basically asking them to extend what they don't need to extend may open them to risk that if they see that in the bid spec that they have to hold their bid for 60 days, say, or 90 days, there may be a premium that they put on their bid in order to make that happen. Because I suspect that some of the bidders, especially the filed sub-bidders who come in, 2 weeks, is that right? Before the general bid is due, obviously they're talking to one another, vetting their bid and so forth, and, the filed sub-bids as well are just responsible for 30 days.
So they could
asking
drop
them-
out even if the GC does it.
Exactly.
So the file subcontractor could drop out
Correct.
Could,
without the GC, okay.
could.
They could refuse to hold their bid any longer than 30 days. And remember that your major trades, which is roughly 30 to 40% of the whole project cost, is filed sub-bids. I mean, mechanical, electrical, fire protection, and plumbing.
And I think you had sent some information out, Steve, maybe just touch on it. If we bid this in the spring instead of in the summer, or over the winter, that some cost escalation that you estimated based on past projects.
Yeah, well, I mean, right now, we're running at a 10 to 12% a year escalation because of this whole supply chain issues. Used to be 3 to 4%, maybe 5% a year. So if we wait from December and we just pick a time period of 3 months and don't get GC bids till March, we're gonna be looking at another 3% increase in escalation, which is about $570,000, just waiting. Because we're basing that 3% on a $19 million construction cost estimate. Isn't 3% on our total project budget, it's 3% on the construction cost. So that's something we don't really want to
I mean, given the
try
fact
and
that
absorb.
we've taken off $2,000 here, $10,000 there to help get our costs down, I think the $570,000 is well worth trying to keep the costs down.
That would be, a tough pill to swallow, for sure.
And it's, I can only go by what's trending now.
Right. Yeah, it's not definitive, but that's what's...
Hmm?
Not your crystal ball.
Right. If I had one,
No one has a crystal ball, but this is based on past
Yeah.
information, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the downside is you're trying to schedule a town meeting in January, but I think I personally feel there's real benefits to the project financially to doing it this way. So it's a matter of really convincing the select board.
Right.
And just from experience, by the time you get some time, most contractors are really hoping to have their work lined up already before springtime. So I think what Steve has already demonstrated tonight is that you've got some real interest in your project, looking at those pre-qualifications that are coming out right now. Some of those guys get projects at the end of this fall, beginning of January. They're not going to be in March looking for new work.
Yeah, if we don't have any more GCs, like I said, we have 8 now. Know all of them. Most likely you're not gonna get 8 bids at this time because there's other jobs. Especially, again, with this structure market.
One challenge that jumped out at me in the schedule was that the GC bid review was between December 22nd and January 4th. So obviously you have 2 holidays in that time. I mean, what's involved in that review process?
That's essentially me and Ron to a lesser degree, just getting their DCAM file, which we're already gonna have a lot of that because we pre-qualified.
Yep.
But just going through and making sure that the bid is correct, that they filled everything out. So I've got it on the schedule, so I'm committing to do it.
It's essentially checking paperwork.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're pre-qualified, there are mass general laws that they need to comply with, there's bonding requirements, insurance requirements. That's,
We would do
that's
that
pretty much it.
on all of them, so.
Right, it's just checking all the boxes on the paperwork and making sure that for some reason the town doesn't need to throw out their bid because of a, you know,
It's gotta be a responsive bid.
yeah, the word's slipping me right now, but some kind of just a typo or something to that effect.
You know, and even sometimes that, it's a decision of whether it's a substantive error or not,
Yeah.
so.
I guess I was asking, or one of the questions was gonna be, do we need to have a committee meeting in that time to vote on the GC bid? I'm just thinking it could be a challenge, but I don't know what the usual process is here, or if it's really, you guys make a or you review the bids and say, yes, this is the lowest responsible bidder. Are you guys good with it?
I would almost suggest that we do that between the 15th and the 28th, before February 3rd, because technically you can't hire anybody until everything's been approved financially. So you probably, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably have to wait for a positive town meeting vote and a debt exclusion vote to say, okay, the town's got the commitments and therefore, we as a committee have reviewed this and we're gonna select, or we're gonna award the contract to so-and-so. And I think in the schedule right now, it says February 3rd for that, so.
That, yeah, a recommendation to award, Ron's right. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure that the bid is correct so that we know who we be recommending to award. But we want the number that's gonna go into the town meeting warrant. That's the number we want.
Right, that's what because, well, while you're right, maybe the decision doesn't need to come until the 15th. We need to know the likely number that we're going with
Right.
before that special town meeting vote.
Right, right.
And so that, between the 22nd and the 4th, it would be vetting to make sure that who is the lowest responsible bidder.
Yeah. It shouldn't take that long.
Yeah, because unless there's a glitch in the paperwork, your low bidder is your low bidder.
Because they're already
They're already pre-qualified.
We'll probably know the day of the opening.
Yeah. So it'll be a good holiday season, because you'll have all the information you need.
Okay.
And that 11th date for the special town meeting, I just chose that date because I believe it's a Tuesday. Or it lined up with other town meeting dates that you've had. I'm not sure if it's a Tuesday or not. So that might be different.
Okay.
I'm sorry, a Wednesday.
And the select board has been responsive to our progress so far, so I think that we're demonstrating a clear benefit to the community by doing it this way. So aside from just reinforcing those points, I mean, I think we're all along about.
Right.
So I don't think this is all of us, it's not all of a sudden us waking up one day of like, oh, let's try something different.
Right.
Yeah, it's been we've had it since this almost, within a few months of this board or this, this group being established. The timeline has been published and set out there. We didn't have exact dates, but we've been on this track for the duration of the project. Once we pretty much selected OPM and, our architects, we kind of were on this track and timeline. Matter of fact, it was part of one of the things we used as criteria to determine who the best candidates would be for OPMs and architects is who had the depth, knowledge, and ability to stay on target and to stay on track to make sure we could, in fact, meet these timelines. So, I agree with you. It's not like a surprise that we're pulling a rabbit out of the hat saying, hey, this has been this has been the track and the course we've been on pretty much since day one.
Anything else anybody wants to discuss?
No.
One thing I'll look into, just to make sure that we're on the right track, is, I know you have the ballot vote and all this out here, but is there a lead time on getting the ballots printed?
I think that's the 35 days. That's the reason, or that was my understanding when Jeff described it last meeting, was that the 35 days was the time period.
Clerk has to be notified.
Right.
In order to make a
Okay, and I just mean like actually printing them too.
Well, I had that concern as
So
well,
we-
because I think that the dollar amount is gonna need to be present on the ballot. So we're gonna need to
Right.
make sure we have enough time from when the bids are in hand to when we can print that dollar amount on the
Right.
ballot.
On an actual document, that's.
Yeah, so it might be good to know when that printing needs to start, if we're
That's
gonna put the number on
right.
it.
I'll find that out.
I mean, I think you can go in it ahead of time and notify the printer that it's coming and, you know, give them the date you need it by, and if they can do it, they can, and if they can't, they can't.
Well, again, I think part of the idea was that we could get the select board to vote on it so that all the stuff can be prepped within that time period, and not wait until necessarily the town vote. So we, somewhere after that 22nd, if that number has to be on the ballot, then that turnaround on that review is important. Because you can have everything prepped at the printer just to plug that last number in.
Yeah, so maybe if you can find that out, what that timeline is, if they said, we know we're gonna print the ballots, we just need to give you exactly what's gonna be on it. Thank you.
So it looks like we go to the select board on the 14th and say, this is the intent, here's the timeline, this is what we need from you, and then we get an answer on the 12th of October.
Well,
Well,
we're hoping we get an answer on the 14th,
Yeah.
right? That they say, we agree with the approach.
Okay.
And then,
yeah, if we can get them to vote on it the 12th, that's great. I just assume that we want to present it to them, they may want to.
yeah, this timeline does not require the vote on the 12th, right? Because it only has to be 35 days before the town
It could be,
meeting.
it could be another meeting.
Right.
I was just trying to go one after the other.
Right. Yeah, so I think the next step is hopefully getting the select board on board with this approach. And I think if they do agree with it, we've been talking a little bit about FAQs. I think this would be a good FAQ to put on the
Of
site
course,
of
yeah.
why we're doing it this way, what the benefit is to the town to do it this way. So we can cross that bridge once we get approval. But
You should put it on the,
I think that
Yeah.
people are going to know why we're asking them to vote in January on it.
Yeah, I think it's important to put the benefits as to why we're doing it, but also what the potential negatives are if we don't be, based on what the known trend is right now. Because I think having people make decisions based on the full gamut of information, not just, hey, what's beneficial to the project, but also, hey, what could the impact be, positive or negative, both directions, so they can make that choice,
Yeah, so I think the question being posted on Zoom is similar to the question that was asked last meeting. And personally, I feel like we're addressing it, why we're trying to do this over the winter.
Absolutely.
But I think, more people will certainly have that same question, so I think putting it on the website will be beneficial.
Just to those that review this later, they probably aren't seeing the chat. So if you could kind of summarize the questions on chats,
Sure.
we'd be able to
It says there's,
understand the full flow.
yeah,
Thank you.
if I can read it here, if the RFP is being sent out with the December due date and the Board of Selectmen doesn't choose to have a special meeting in January, what then? The RFP is being sent out in December due date and the board doesn't choose to have a special meeting in January, what, well, I feel like we'll know
Yeah, we're gonna
by
ask in
October
October.
if we're gonna do it.
Yep.
So we'll know before we even send out the for GC bid, if this is the approach we're taking. There's numerous assumptions being made about why we need a special meeting in January, construction costs increasing, contractors not holding prices, et cetera. I'm very concerned the public may have difficulty in getting to a meeting and vote in blustery winter. Why do we not even attempt contractors to hold pricing until such a time frame when we can maximize town participation during the time of year when the weather is better? Gives the appearance of trying to push this through with minimal resident participation, please address my concern. I guess the way I would address that is, I mean, we don't know that this is helping the project or hurting the project to have the bid. We only know that financially, we feel it's helping the project.
Right.
It could be the people that don't like the project show up in January.
Exactly.
And the people that are pro the project don't show up. So I get it. I mean, there might be more participation in May, but I think there's some pretty solid reasons why we're doing it here.
There's a
That
cost impact, yeah.
it's gonna be I mean,
May
again,
is
you don't have
even
a
worse,
crystal
yeah.
ball, but history would tell you there's gonna be a cost impact to the project to do it that way.
I think the idea that we're trying to do this under the eyes of the public is like the furthest possible idea from what we're actually trying to do. I think we're doing this, like, we're going through the effort to hold a special meeting and a special election because we're being cognizant of the fiscal impact on the public, not because we're trying to hide it at all. Like, we've been completely open for well over a year anyway at this point.
You're trying to be financially responsible.
And I think that, again, the timeline has been, we've been on the chart and on the course of this timeline since day one. So like, it's been over a year that we've been plotting and charting the course this way, not to encourage participation, but just like, you know, Justin said, this is one big issue that has a significant impact, and the focus is, hey, we want everybody to participate and say their piece and come to the ballot box and vote, and not be distracted with anything else. This is it. This is all that's there. It's a meeting just for this, and we're trying to, you know, make it a point and a priority to, you know, do their civic part.
I don't know if I'm opening a can of worms, but are people able to vote, like, I know you can mail in votes for a regular election. Is that only for that, or, like, is this a mood issue because
Well,
people could vote?
the town meeting, you have to show up
Okay,
to vote.
okay.
I believe, I guess I don't know that for certain, but I always thought you had to get, raise your hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know about the vote after that.
The ballot may have different, I know what you're saying about
Okay.
the mail-in and the early.
Right.
And I think person.
Question for the
Any other discussion on this? So I think Steve may be having some of these bullet points about potential cost of the project of moving this timeline. And
Yeah, ready for the
just ready for,
select board.
because they're gonna ask the same
Yeah,
questions.
sure.
Okay. But this is good, and I would I mean, we should send this to the select board right away. But do you have a copy of this already, Amanda?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, this was in the packet.
Yeah, so you can send it to them?
I'll
They
send
might
it
not
to
dig through our packet.
I'll make sure it's included, I'll make sure it's included in the, select board packet for the meeting on the 14th.
Last discussion item, please discuss upcoming meeting schedule for the committee. So I think we've been meeting every 2 weeks, more or less. I think the last couple meetings have been every 3 weeks, just because of summer vacations and things. But our next scheduled meeting would be on the 14th, which is the same day that we're meeting with the select board. So we could keep it that, I mean, we obviously start meeting an hour before the select board meets. I don't know when on the agenda we would be. We could keep that, but we'd probably want to keep the agenda that we can get it done in an hour.
And then we'll be here for the select board.
And then we'd be here for the select board discussion.
And if we are pitching what we just talked about, it's probably important for us to have a good showing at the select board meeting.
Okay. So we'll keep the 14th then? Right. Do we want to, I guess I should ask, do we want to keep every 2 weeks as well? I mean, it feels like we have enough topics to talk about every 2 weeks, and I guess if we didn't have any, we could always just skip.
And if we
Meeting.
did every month, we might be here till 10 o'clock.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so let's just keep every other week,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah, and if you
Keep
need to
moving
zoom
forward.
in for some, Ron, I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't want to, I know you have some you have drawings to finish.
yeah.
So we can deal with it. All right, so we'll keep the next meeting as the 14th.
Mhm.
We'll try and keep the agenda relatively light if we can to get it done in an hour. But we may have more time depending on where we fall on the select board agenda. So-
Okay.
Might know somebody that can help you with that.
If we had an extra half an
Maybe
hour.
later, right.
7:30 maybe. I don't want to make it too late, but, okay. All right, so we'll keep it every 2 weeks, and the next meeting will be on the 14th. All right. So there were 2 action items listed. I think I talked about at the beginning of the meeting. We won't vote on the first item because we're still waiting to hear back if we can even post the board, so I don't think it makes much sense to vote on them. I will update that I reached out to the library, the transfer station, and the senior center. Library and transfer station had absolutely no issue posting it. The senior center did say that they wanted to make sure that one would be posted at town hall. I think they just wanted to make sure that they were kind of in lockstep with everybody else. It was really, they weren't opposed to posting it, they just wanted to make sure that everybody was on board posting it. So I think if we can get this approval from OCPF, we'll be good to go, and we can vote on that on the 14th, hopefully.
So do you need to have a motion to table the item until the,
No, usually I haven't in the past, I've just skipped it. But, so, I'll ask for a motion to table the discussion on the information boards to our next meeting on the 14th.
I'll move that.
Second. Or move, second, okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 you have to do a roll call.
What's that?
Do you have to do a roll?
No,
call?
well, Aaron dropped off.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So
Oh,
everybody's
and
here.
Okay, yep, we're good.
All right, the motion passes unanimously. Last action item is please consider approval of the meeting minutes. So, Chris?
I reviewed the June 29th regular meeting minutes, had no edits or comments, so I'd like to ask for a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's unanimous. He said,
Yeah,
that's it.
you got it.
Unanimous. All right, thank you. Any other discussion items from anyone? All right, seeing none. Ernie?
Yeah, just to throw a little bit more into the game, the general contractor can put into his bid that he will not accept bids of any other contractors that are the subcontractors. He will not work with them. He will eliminate them from his bid if he is high, and if one of our file sub bidders is low, he could have it in his bid that he would not work with that contractor unless the laws have changed. And when that happens, that low bidder can file a lawsuit, which would take your timing and throw it all to hell. And also, a filed sub bidder, and for the people out there that don't know it, this is one of the stupid states that still has filed sub bidders. Nevada was the only other one, and they got rid of it. But you can have people that are not qualified that can come ahead and put in a suit that they aren't qualified, and they can slow you up. So I don't know how the new laws are, if that is still on the books, but that is a can of worms that's laying out there. I don't know if there's any way of finding out ahead of time that is legal from a general contractor who they would eliminate from their bid as a filed subcontractor.
I can speak
you
to
wanna handle
that.
that?
It's correct. A contractor can restrict, or a file subbidder can restrict from a general contractor in their bid. And a general contractor doesn't necessarily have to choose the low bidder of the file subbids. However, he puts himself at risk of not winning the project because he's potentially picking the second or third lowest file subbidder. But I do believe, because we've done it on another job, where a low bid general contractor came in, had carried two file subbidders that were not the low bidders, and the town and the awarding authority said, no, you will carry these low bidders. because it was there's a law on that allows the awarding authority to do that, because it's, it's to their benefit for the overall cost.
As long as they're qualified, obviously.
Well, yeah, again, we're pre-qualifying everybody, but any file subbid, bidder, or general contractor that bids on public work has to be certified by DCAM. And they have to submit their letter of certification and their DCAM update statement with their bid.
Is there any recourse, I don't want to drag this on too much longer, but is there any recourse? Carry them.
He would have to provide a very good reason, potentially that they may be in suit against each other. But it would have to be reviewed. But on this particular project, that general contractor ended up using the two that he did not carry. So there's precedent for it.
Yeah, I think what's being pointed out is anybody can protest anything. So it is Massachusetts Public Work. There are statutes and requirements and regulations that need to be followed by anybody. And, if anybody wants to make us stink, they can make us stink. The good news is we've got a lot of experience, even from committee members, to just make sure that we're not, we're limiting that exposure. Let's put it that way. As Steve just said, he's kind of lived through this, and we kind of know the rules and regulations to make sure that, we're minimizing any risk of that. And so far, we see the list of bidders that we have, so.
I was gonna say, that doesn't the pre-qualification part and the due diligence that's being done now help limit some of that exposure, because you're only getting qualified bidders and sub-bidders, GCs, subcontractors, which, hopefully you'll have some awareness, because you know the players, if you will. To hopefully, I know we can't take away all the potential, because just like you said, people can protest anything.
Right.
But, hopefully that step that has been taken in the pre-qual piece is hopefully helping limit some of that exposure for us.
Yeah, because they do have to give quite a bit of information.
Thank you. All right. If there's no other topics, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Ronnie, you don't get a vote.
I don't get a vote.